Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're doing something pretty critical. We're going back to a specific moment in history.
A foundational one, really.
Exactly. We're looking at that 1997 CNN interview with Osama bin Laden.
Mm.
And our goal here, let's be clear, is to pull out directly from his words in that interview. Well, what he said were his reasons for declaring jihad against the U.S. back then.
And also who he said the targets were,
Yeah.
specifically in 97.
Precisely. This is about understanding that specific historical statement from the source itself. No endorsements here, just, getting the facts from the transcript.
Okay, so diving in. What really jumps out from that interview is hearing the grievances straight from him. He claimed the U.S. government committed, and I'm quoting here, extremely unjust, hideous, and criminal acts.
Strong words. But he didn't just leave it at that general level, did he? What specific things did he sort of pin those unjust acts on when you look at the text?
Right, he was quite specific. A really central point, you can't miss it, was U.S. support for the Israeli occupation of Palestine.
Okay, so that was front and center for him, though.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Foundation. And he didn't stop there. He also said the U.S. was directly responsible for those killed in Palestine, Lebanon, and Iraq.
Directly responsible.
Yes, and he linked it, in his words, to America's subordination to the Jews. It gives you, a very direct look into his stated worldview at that moment.
And digging into those grievances, there was another major one he emphasized, wasn't there? Something about the U.S. attitude and presence.
Hmm. He talked about the arrogance of the United States regime, but maybe even more significantly, he focused on its occupation of Arabia.
Referring to Saudi Arabia, the holy sites.
Exactly. He explicitly called it the holiest place of the Muslims, Mecca and Medina. That presence, that occupation, as he termed it, was presented as a core justification.
So connecting those dots, it really highlights how much, for him, this was tied into religious sensitivities and, regional politics.
Absolutely. The idea of non-Muslim forces being present on what he considered sacred ground, that was clearly a major point of contention in his declaration back in 97.
Okay, so we have these quite specific stated reasons. What about the target? How precise was he about who this jihad was aimed at in 1997? Was it broad or...
Actually, he was remarkably precise at that point in time. He explicitly zeroed in on. His words were striking at the U.S. soldiers inside Arabia.
Inside Arabia specifically?
Yes, the country of the two holy places, Mecca and Medina.
Yeah.
He was very geographically specific.
Wow, that really narrows the focus of that initial declaration, doesn't it? Much more than maybe people remember. Did he offer a sort of religious basis for that specific target?
He did. He provided a justification directly. He stated that in our religion, it is not permissible for any non-Muslim to stay in Arabia.
So that framed his focus. Remove the U.S. soldiers from that specific region.
That was the stated military goal then, yes, based on that religious interpretation he presented.
Right. Now, this brings up a really critical question, especially looking back with hindsight. What about American civilians? Were they part of this stated plan in 1997?
And that's a key distinction, one that often gets blurred. He addressed it directly. He said American civilians were, quote, not targeted in our plan.
Okay, so not targeted.
But, and this is crucial, he immediately followed with a warning. He said they must leave Arabia and then added, we do not guarantee their safety.
So not a direct target, but a very clear ultimatum. Leave or your safety isn't guaranteed.
Precisely. It wasn't targeting them directly in the plan, but it was an explicit demand for their evacuation, tied again to his view about non-Muslim presence there. It's a really important nuance from the 97 source material.
Yeah, so this deep dive, really looking at the text from 97, it clarifies things quite a bit. The specific grievances he laid out, Palestine, Iraq, Lebanon, the U.S. presence in Arabia, and that initial very focused target, U.S. military personnel in Arabia.
It shows that, at least in that specific declaration, it wasn't this sort of undefined global war against all Americans everywhere. It had a stated geographical and military focus alongside those broader political complaints.
Which really leaves a thought for you, the listener, doesn't it?
It does. You have to ask, how do these kinds of declarations, which start with such a specific focus and justification, how do they get interpreted later on? How might they, evolve or shift over time?
Right. Understanding the precise language used right at the beginning in moments like this 97 interview is so vital for tracking how things developed and, how narratives can change.
Exactly. It's about grasping that initial stated intent and trajectory.